Today we're going to talk about some of the vegetables in a little bit more detail. We can't possibly talk about every single vegetable that's out there, but we'll talk about the more common ones, the ones that you're more likely to grow. First, we're going to talk about the cool weather crops. Those are the ones that are generally easier to grow at the higher elevations in northern Arizona. And the first group of the cool weather plants I'm going to talk about are the root crops. And by root crops, I'm talking about radishes, turnips, beets, carrots, parsnips, those kinds of things. Remember, all of them are cool weather crops. In general, because of that, they can be planted fairly early. They're going to be somewhat tolerant of frost, so you don't have to wait until after the last frost date. All of them grow better actually in kind of a deeply worked, looser soil, because it's the roots that you're going to be using for the food, so the roots need to be able to grow down and need to be able to expand, so a little bit looser soil is appropriate for these. All of these need to be directly seeded, meaning that you're going to plant the seeds directly into the ground where that plant is going to grow. None of these should be grown as transplants because you'll get very bizarre and misshapen roots if you try to transplant any of these, so direct seed them. And all of them need to be thinned so that there's enough room for the roots to expand. The first one I would like to mention is radishes. Radishes are probably the very easiest vegetable of all to grow. It's a very good plant for beginning gardeners to grow. They only require about 30 days from when you plant them until they're mature. Very few problems with them at all. And there are many, many varieties, and all the varieties are appropriate for our area. A couple things to keep in mind. One problem you could have with them is the texture. Sometimes they'll tend to get kind of a woody or pithy texture to them, or they'll be too hot, too spicy than they should be. If you encountered that issue, that means that the plants have been too hot and too dry. So they need to be a little bit shadier, and they need to have more water than what you've given them. They could use a thicker mulch than what you've given them. Beets are a very good crop to grow. Also very easy to grow. Beets, keep in mind, you can eat the tops as well as the root. Don't throw the tops away. They're very edible and they're very good. And they can be used in salads, or they can be cooked as well. Beets, most of them tend to get fairly large, so you need to thin them pretty aggressively so that the roots have enough room to expand. And if you're familiar with beet seeds, each one that you plant is actually a cluster of smaller seeds, so they will always come up in multiples. No matter how far apart you plant them, you still have to thin them no matter what. Beets will keep in the refrigerator or in cold storage for several months after you harvest them. So, it's a very good long keeping crop. Carrots are a little bit more difficult in our area. Carrots are a wonderful crop to grow. They're very nutritious. The main problem that I'm told that people have with growing carrots in our area is just getting them to germinate in the first place. Carrot seeds are very, very tiny. Very small seeds need to be planted very shallow, just right under the surface of the soil. Carrot seed is very slow to germinate, and you're planting them in the spring during the driest and windiest time of the year, so it's very difficult to keep that top layer of soil moist enough so that the seeds can germinate. So you need to figure out some way that you can do that. There are many ways to do that, but the one that I have found that works the best for me is to use actually a burlap mulch on carrots and other seeds that are very small. And by a burlap mulch, I'm just using basically a burlap feed bag. And you can purchase these at any number of places. The hardware stores usually have them. Feed stores generally have them. They're very inexpensive. If you look closely at them, you can see through them. They're very porous. So they let light through, which will also help the seeds to germinate. So what we do is just put this down on top of the seed bed after you've planted it, put some bricks or rocks or something on top of it to hold it down so it doesn't blow away, And then you just water this burlap and leave it on there until the seeds germinate. And you peek under there every few days to see if they have germinated yet or not. And once they germinate, once they come up, then you pull the burlap off of there. You will find that particularly with carrots, but I use it also for radishes, lettuce, beets, all of the stuff that has small seeds. Those seeds are actually will germinate twice as fast if you use this method. I'll talk a little bit about the leafy green type of vegetables that you can grow. I don't have too much to say about this because it's just so easy to grow them. And these vegetables I'm talking about are things like lettuce, spinach, Swiss chard, mustard greens, all of those kind of things where you're eating the leaves. All of them will grow really, really well at the high elevations. They are a cool weather crop. They do like to have a fairly good mulch around them because they do have to be kept moist. They can handle partial shade. You can grow all of these by directly seeding them, which is the easiest thing to do. However, they are also very good with transplants. You can start these inside and transplant them outside. That works just as well if you want to do it that way. One thing you do have to watch for is that they don't get too hot and too dry, kind of like what I mentioned with the radishes. With these crops, particularly with spinach and lettuce, is that if they get too hot and too dry, they're going to bolt. And what that means is they're going to send up a bloom stalk. And as soon as that happens, the rest of the leaves are no longer going to be usable to eat. They get very, very bitter. So pretty much you have to destroy the plant at that point. And that goes for both lettuce and for spinach. Spinach is not only a cool weather crop, it's actually a cold weather crop. The seeds germinate the best in cold soil. So the spinach can be planted really, really early, probably one of the earliest things that you can plant. Peas are a wonderful, wonderful crop to grow because they taste so incredibly good. They don't taste like anything at all that you buy in the store. They certainly don't taste like what you buy frozen, and they certainly don't taste like what you buy canned as well. They're super easy. They're a cool weather crop. You can plant them very, very, very early. They can handle snow. They can handle a lot of frost. I like to plant them around the middle of March whenever possible. There are all kinds of varieties that you can grow. All of them will do really well. Things like sugar snap peas, you actually eat the pod as well as just the pea. Those are like eating candy. In my family, those generally don't even make it into the house. I mean, we just generally go out and eat those right off of the plants just because they are so good. Fresh peas from the garden are one of those heavenly, delightful things. So I always recommend everybody grow peas if you possibly can.